All right, so next thing on the docket is Twilight Princess HD, which I got to play. There's some coverage on the site right now. Very, very cool stuff. We got a graphics comparison. We have a written preview. We have a bunch of clips of the game itself. Have to say, looks a lot better than those trailers made me think it did. I feel like, especially the last story trailer I saw, really kind of worried me because there were some scenes where it's like, this looks completely washed out. Some of it looks completely almost bad.
We're in a weird spot with video games now because to actually see a still of a game, it has to be uploaded from a screenshot from a press site to a Twitter account, which adds its own like defractaling or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, they use defractaling.
And then you pull it up on your phone that might load weird or it's dark or whatever.
Or even
by the
just
time you
YouTube
actually see a picture of
compression.
it,
Even YouTube compression is the worst culprit in my mind. Like, the footage in house or the footage on screen was 10 times better.
You ever see one of those like memes on Facebook that just has like giant pixel squares all over it because it's just been it's making a copy of a copy of a copy of something. So by the time you see it, and I know there was that thing on NeoGAF where it was basically showing some of the characters in the game. Yeah, and
I thought that thread was hilarious.
Yeah, it was very funny.
I was laughing so hard. Good
sometimes,
job, guys.
sometimes you go with what you can get, right? And to see those screens, I was sitting there going like, man, I'm kind of bummed out. This is not really worth the effort. And I was hoping this would look better than it did. And then you came back to the office with a bunch of footage, and I was like, yes, it does. It looks gorgeous.
But I also want to manage expectations, right?
Yes.
Like the geography, like the objects look the same. It's not like if you thought the trees looked kind of behind the times, which we all did when the game came out, right? Like the kind of cardboard origami trees. Yeah. They're still like that. It's just that they did clean up the textures and some of the imagery we have seen online that does not look different from the GameCube version, I don't feel like are representative of what it actually looks like. Well, the lighting looks nicer on a TV screen too. It looks very gray in a lot of the pictures.
Yes, yeah.
But it does not look as vibrant as the GameCube one.
Clearing it up as much as they had with like the upgrade in texture resolution with the lighting specifically, it does a great job of making the game look better, but it also brings to light like some imperfections like those trees specifically, or even like if you look at the thumbnail of one of the thumbnails we have of the graphics comparison, Link is holding a key in front of him, and I bet you didn't notice that much that his thumb actually goes through that guard that he wears on his sword hand. Yeah. And so it's just like, oh man, I never noticed that there before. And there's a lot of that I feel happening. I feel like some of the canyons and especially like the exterior environments still look a little weird to me, but overall, like playing through that game again, for the time that I got to spend with it, so I got to play with slight spoiler for the next 10 seconds, run away. I got to play with Temple of Time, which is a late game dungeon, much later on in the campaign, which is a cool dungeon, by the way. Like I really like that space, and I also like the Sky Temple and as well as Snow Peak. Snow Peak is really cool. But I got to play through some of those areas. Oh, you're being lied to the whole time in the temple. It's amazing.
It's so good.
Yeah,
and like I really like Jared Petty. Like,
he's in that.
Yeah,
I recognize him. No, but like the geometry on like maybe some of the mountains looks a little old. Yeah. But overall, the feel, the way it plays, like I was really happy with it overall, and I'm excited to play it now.
Yeah, and I share your enthusiasm for the game. I had forgotten how many cool areas and things are in there, right? And like I do think the beginning is a slog, and seeing you play through that again, I'm like, I love how it sets up the end in the very beginning. I'm not going to spoil anything.
Yeah.
And I love that, and in hindsight, it's so cool that happens. But when you're playing the beginning and you're a returning Zelda player, you feel like it drags a little bit.
It does drag.
Once you get out, it gets really, really cool. There's so many cool areas to explore. Now, but there has been, I mean, I've seen a lot of negative comments even on the new footage that you showed. And like one thing it is not a complete redo of the game. It is definitely running in higher resolution, and it's not just, they didn't just flip the resolution. Like the textures are redrawn. Some textures are outright like replaced and new. There's more that went into updating the game than I think people see.
So would you say this is less of a remake than say what Grezzo did with Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a good way to sort of manage expectations.
And it's less than Uncharted Collection too. Like if you play Uncharted Collection, right? Like they did a lot more to the graphics cleanup. Like you go into the first game, you're like, wow, it looks very vibrant, even though it doesn't look as good as the later Uncharted's. But it's awesome. I think people, when they see it running on their TV, they'll say, oh, it looks a lot better than what I remember. But it is Twilight Princess warts and all. It has the beautiful animations in the cutscene and the really stiff running around. Like Link's animation is very stiff, right?
Well, when he's running around and when he's swimming, it looks much better. There are other parts of the game, like cutscenes, where it does look better versus just general walking and running in general.
And it has the awkward like animation loops, right? When you have the wolf sitting there and like goes through like the same animation while you're, if you hit the A button, it'll advance, but like it's stuck and they do that weird kind of like Street Fighter ready animation.
That's really
right?
small stuff too. I feel like that was the first game that when they approached it, the characters didn't stay stuck in that animation till you hit A. They kind of finished and would just wait until you got to the next moment in either what they had to say or in the story. Like I feel like that game in particular, especially given the time it came out, it was basically a lot of give and take where some of it did look dated and some of it did try to catch up with where presentation was at the time. Obviously outside of voice acting, which is another thing. Someone put like, I saw as a comment, and I'm just like, why are you expecting that? This is a remake of, this is not a remake, this is a re-release of Twilight Princess, warts and all, like you just said. Where does that expectation come from?
Well, the expectation is when you charge, almost it's full price, basically,
I think it's full
right?
price,
And
it is full
I think
price.
that's where the expectation comes in. It's like, hey, as a person who paid full price for this game before, what is the reason? What is my reason for checking it out again when I'm paying the same price now, 10 years later? And like, yeah, it's great. It runs on the new console.
But it's clearly a nostalgia play. Like, it's clearly the same play that, like, Majora's Mask was, Ocarina of Time were, although those were more effort
doesn't
put
make
into
the pricing right, though.
It doesn't. I'm not going to say that.
And that's, like, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, like, they felt different because of the upgraded visuals. And, like, you said it best, right? It's like, that's what you remember it looking like.
Right.
But it didn't actually look like that.
Yeah.
And even Wind Waker, Wind Waker felt like more of an upgrade. And partially it's because Wind Waker's art style is so timeless, right? Like that game just looks so good, and it was much more blurry in its original release. Like in hindsight, when you see it in HD, it just looked so gorgeous.
Yeah, I
Whereas
agree.
Twilight Princess it absolutely looks nicer. So people saying it looks like crap, it doesn't look like crap. It has some really gorgeous moments. The lighting doesn't all look that flat. There's some really vibrant, nice looking stuff in there too. But it is not a it's not a full price redo of the original, and I think that's
So
where
you think that's
people,
risky of them to price it at full price?
Yeah, and the reason why it works again is it has an amiibo in it, right? Like you are getting a Wolfling amiibo, and it's a nice looking amiibo. I think it looks really cool.
You have a gallery of that too on the site.
You're getting that with the base package. Do we know the price of the digital download? Like
for Twilight Princess standalone? I have to look that up.
Yeah, and like I think that's the big question, right? Like I have no problem paying full price because it has the amiibo in it.
I just think the big question is, if you are a fan of this and you've played it, obviously you have the choice of, are you going to buy this or not? If you didn't play it, it's definitely a game that I would recommend worth checking out because it is Zelda Twilight Princess in all of its warts and all. And that game had, you've said this once, Brian, very high highs and in some places very low lows.
Yeah, I think it has
a mix of both.
It has some of the best temples in the entire Zelda history.
So
I'd say.
good.
I mean, some of them are just incredible.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to play this. I think you bring up a good point, Per, that it's a little weird that I'm going to be spending the same price for it in 2016 as I did in 2007, 2008.
Well, especially when you think about like when other updated remasters, if you want to call them that, or re-releases, actually cut the price in order to sell. Like it does look kind of selfish of Nintendo.
You mentioned the Uncharted Collection, right? It's three games for $60.
3 really good games too.
So this is different, and I don't like.
That wasn't a huge bump, like Uncharted Collection from PS3 to PS4. Let's not pretend that's a huge leap.
It looks
good. It doesn't look like.
To be fair, those games always looked really good.
Yeah. No, they were made with like the technology of 2008, 2000. Oh, well, Uncharted 1 was 2008 or 2007.
But I mean, it's effectively a one generation jump. Between both of these games that we're talking about. But I think though what really fascinates me about this is I go back and play a lot of the Zelda games for some reason, and I think I know why, but I had never gone back and really replayed Twilight Princess. It's probably because every time I sat down to the first few hours pushed me away. Yeah. But I haven't in a while. Yeah. And I think when I went back about 3 years ago, Jose's always got me thinking about going back and playing through Zelda games.
Every time you talk to me,
every time I talk to you, you're playing one of them. So
I'm playing 5 right now.
I played through Link's Awakening from start to finish last weekend because I absolutely love that game. I'm going to do the Oracle of Ages and Seasons games next.
Nice.
because I miss them, and they're great games. But this was the one where I went to go back 2 years ago, and I was like, oh, that's right. It's pointer controls, and there's a lot of like flicking the wrist and stuff like that to play it on the Wii. And it didn't look great hooked up, and I was like, yeah, the first few hours kind of pushed me away, and I just stopped playing it. And I liked that game a lot. So I'm very excited to go back and try it again. I'm a little hesitant to be like, I'm playing the GameCube version now. It's going to be completely mirrored. So I think my muscle memory in my brain is going to be like, do I go left here or go right here?
Dude. It is confusing. I did that. Yeah.
No. So I've been playing. Actually, I've been playing a little bit of each version.
I don't know how you're doing.
So I'm just working on a bunch of things, and the best way for me to get ideas is to play the game of the moment or the game that I'm mostly thinking about. And in this case, it was really weird because I turn off like the GameCube version, power up the Wii version, then go to make a left. Like, oh wait, it's on the right this time. So it caught me completely off guard.
I think about the first time I unlocked mirror mode in Mario Kart 64, and I drove on Toad's Turnpike, and every time I was like, "This is a left," and it was like, "Ah!" and I just crashed into a truck. Like that's. I mean, there's no trucks in Zelda, but that's a worry, right?
Yeah.
Like there are big cows.
But on the flip side, I think it's going to help make the experience kind of feel fresh and new for me again, and I'm super excited to play through this again. I think the Amiibo's gorgeous. I think the art looks really cool. Yeah. You were talking about the music a little bit. That's the one thing that I'm kind of
the music is. I don't think they've updated the sound of this game
the same,
at all.
Yeah,
which at the time even felt very criticized in reviews, having like sort of a MIDI-based sound instead of something that was fully orchestral at the time. I will say though, some of their auditions are really cool. Like Hero Mode is basically the Wii version. The image is mirror reversed. And the consequence of making mirror mode this way is that, unlike Wind Waker, where you can toggle back and forth at will, this one, once you commit to one side, you're stuck there until you start to save file over. Weird thing in Wii mode, in Hero mode, is that I couldn't aim in first person. Everything was third person, and I think that's. I almost wonder, is that the Wii version of the game? Like, did they update those assets too? Like, I really want to know how this got made.
Yeah,
I really,
that's so weird.
Really want
that's
to
fascinating.
know. But then they have the Amiibo support, which almost feels like a reaction also to some early reviews to that game. So if you remember, a lot of reviews when that game came out were criticizing that the combat had gotten too easy.
Yeah.
Like, Link is so powerful as a character, and you learn these really advanced techniques. But it's not like Ocarina of Time, where you had enemies like one of the Stoffos that you had to wait for your opening, or the wolf, you had to wait until it took a swing at you in order to land a blow. There aren't enemies, at least in the first half of Twilight Princess, that work that way. Yeah. So when you swipe your Ganondorf amiibo and you're taking double damage, you put yourself at risk, at least if you do take a hit. And then if you really want to be a maniac, which Nintendo kept trying to get me to do, and I was like, no, I don't want to do this. Hero mode with Ganondorf, 4 times the damage on each hit. It's Bloodborne now.
So what does that So what does that look like? Like you're fighting a boss, and is it like
I was in the Cave of Shadows and I died. It was painful because I had that. I was doing fine. They're like, oh, why don't you swipe Ganondorf?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
And how long does that last? Can you unswipe it?
Once it's game over, it goes away.
Then you gotta swipe again.
Yeah. So you can opt in to make any area harder. And then
pretty much
to get out of it, just die.
It kind of feels like that.
But there's no reward or anything. It's basically fans who want to have the extra challenge and
I'm
maybe
sure someo's gonna
use it in Twitch streams and show
speed
off
runs.
your skills.
I'm sure someone's going to set a speed run record for 4 times damage hero mode, Twilight Princess HD.
I can't wait to see that.
Really
Let's go.
I can't wait to see that.
How by the way, how is the aiming with the gamepad? Because you can tilt the gamepad up and down and it'll move the reticle.
Yeah,
right?
so fine, just like if you're playing Splatoon again. Like I play Splatoon with motion on, so I'm okay with that. You can obviously switch those off. A lot of the gamepad functionality mirrors what they did with Wind Waker, which I think is really smart. So you have the hot swap for inventory, you have the map there at all times. You can scan an amiibo. Apparently, you can unlock 50 stamps, and they have the Hylian script as part of it. Like you have the alphabet. I think that's dangerous because someone's going to start spelling some naughty words. In my opinion, like how are you going to even police that?
Well, the moderators need to learn a new language.
Apparently, you're gonna be Hylian experts. I mean, it took me 2 seconds to think that up. I just hope that someone got paid to think about that.
Yeah. That's cool.
What else is there? I think
you can play with the Pro controller if you want to.
Just
play
like Wind Waker HD.
So if you're worried about battery life on your gamepad, you have the original battery. That's going to solve that issue, right?
But you can't play with a Wii remote and nunchuck.
No, you can't.
Okay. Not in.
That's interesting. I mean, that's a big change from how Nintendo used to think about games, right? Like the fact that the motion control has been sidelined like that is an interesting topic, I think, for NX too. So we'll see what happens there.
I'm personally totally okay with, because I think like what Jose was saying before, how people were criticized the game for having simplistic combat. I think that was sort of compounded by the fact that the combat was simple, but your motion movements and the actual physical exertion you need to go through was not.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically mapped a button to swiping in any direction, when really it was just tapping the A button. And that's all I really wanted to do, and it's a lot of the reason.
It wasn't like Skyward Sword where you had direction.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because you said on this show that the combat in Skyward Sword, you didn't like it as much because it turned sort of the enemies into a little bit of a puzzle where there was a bit of a drag. You couldn't take them out quite as quickly.
Couple of reasons.
Okay, wait, I'm coming back.
Yeah.
So I was playing that game like 2 weeks ago. I'm right here. You know where to find me. And I like that. Like, I do like that. I like that there's a bit more nuance to combat. Granted, it is still rooted in the same style that Ocarina of Time has worked. And I really hope that Zelda Wii U makes effort to change some of that, because think about it. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, all sort of based on that same combat system. I think it might be time to let go just a little bit. You know, keep Z targeting, but find another way to kind of do it.
But why? It was so good.
But because the complaint was, at least in Twilight Princess, this is easy. And maybe the flip side is make the enemies harder, give them less openings. I don't know.
Fewer.
Fewer.
Yeah, but
you.
The Zelda games have always been really good at letting you use your different types of weapons, right? You'll encounter a beetle with a metal shield, and you use the hook shot to take away the metal shield. And before that, you go around and hit it from the back. Like, it has these really cool puzzles.
And there's some that you can't take away the shield.
You play at your own pace. My issue with Skyward Sword, and by the way, it didn't ruin the game for me, and it's not every enemy, but it did introduce waiting into combat, where you're waiting for the Deku Baba mouth to open this way, to swipe this way, and then you're waiting for it to turn again, and like
I don't wait. It's called skill.
It slowed down combat a little bit for maybe I'm old, Jose.
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Those long arms, they just swing faster.
That's right.
That's
totally built for waggle.
And the other thing is
built for waggle and speed.
That's mean. Wherever that's going, that's terrible.
I mean, with the game, I'm not talking about anything else.
God damn it, I'm not finished.
I know you are.
The other issue was that it was not 100% accurate. And that was one of my core complaints with the Wii U,
so I agree.
Even with Motionplus.
I agree. It does take some getting used to, and that's something that I think gamers have a low tolerance for.
Yeah.
It's the reason why most people turn off motion control, is because if they're not lining up good shots in the first couple of minutes, they're like, I'm done with this. I'm going to do this the way I've known how to do it for my entire life.
Yeah, and Link comes into the dungeon. There are two Stalfos attacking in, and he says, "Hold on a second, I got to calibrate my sword."
No. See, that's not how combat unfolded at the Otero house. That's how the game starts every time, and I think that's a bummer. But I feel like it was
got out of whack for me.
It did for me all the time too. I would check my phone.
You guys
got to
stop swinging like you're Conan the Barbarian. That's the problem. You're from Germany. I know that this is a problem. I'm guessing.
Jose, my problem was you would play that game. You'd play that game for like 30 hours.
Conan
right?
is not German. Maybe he's German. He's Austrian.
I like to play. I don't play Zelda games in like I'm playing The Witness now. I can play The Witness for 60 minutes at a time before I'm like, I'm done. My brain's cooked. Yeah. But Zelda, I can play that for 7 hours straight, without even thinking.
So you don't want it to be a workout? Not that it is.
Well, not only that, but it's also like part of that 7 hours is sometimes I'm like, I put my phone down for a second, I go in the other room to get a bite to eat or something like that. I come back.
Oh, and you're tethered to that thing, so the controller.
Yeah, tethered to it, and it's also like if you let it alone for too long, it forgets who you are. You come back, it's like recalibrate.
That's a system problem. That's not a Zelda problem.
I mean, it turned out being a gameplay problem.
We got to move on. But last thoughts.
But those are all the like Skyward Sword. I think gets a bad rap because of some of those issues. Like when it doesn't work, it's irritating. Like you'll fight an enemy and like I swiped sideways. Like why is it registering differently? Right? Like it annoys you, and that just wasn't present with Wind Waker, where you hit A and it always worked. And so that's why some of those moments stick out in my memory. Sure. There are lots of moments where it worked beautifully, and I loved it.
And I will tell you where. Yeah. The Lanrio Temple. That area, which sets off an awesome cutscene, which then sets off your first fight with the imprisoned. That sequence of events is some of my favorite Zelda that I think I've played.
It has because great moments.
That temple is so much fun. That was an hour, maybe a little more, where I was like, I have to figure all of this out. And there's a rule in the Otero house where if you start a temple in Zelda, You don't go to bed till it's done. Like, it has to be one sitting. Yes, I do not like picking up the pieces to try to figure out what I was trying to think of. I hate that.
I would have been awake for a 3-day weekend for the Water Temple on N64 the first time I played that.
No, I'm serious.
Like, Jose, let me go to sleep.
I left my N64
that's how I
on,
because you couldn't save everywhere.
Yeah, you got. I am Zelda Jesus then, because it always works out. I'm in and out in an hour. All right, so we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got to talk about actually a really good topic, which is what's gonna happen with NX and E3. We'll be right back.